Welcome to Money Matters. My name's David Kroll, and I'm from Mortgage Network. And standing with me, my partner, Emily Johnson from Polaris Capital. We're here once again. Today is, we're filming this
Inauguration Day.
Inauguration Day, January 20th. It's about 9:30 in the morning, and I believe the actual inauguration ceremony takes place about noon, if I'm not mistaken. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a sort of playful time of it today. We're going to touch on a whole variety of issues and ingredients of the American economy and give a quick take back and forth of what's likely, if anything, to happen in the first quarter, in the first 90 days, 100 days of the presidency. What's the take going to be, and will there be any change in the following 15 or 16 ways? We'll see how many we get through. First of all, interest rates.
They've jumped back up a little.
They've jumped back up. 10-year Treasury is up to 2.5. That's up from 1.7 before the election. That's a 45% increase in interest rates in a very, very short period of time.
And it has absolutely nothing or very, very limited anything to do with what the Fed has done. It's
right.
Market-driven.
Right. And the Federal Reserve has lost its teeth for the time being and is likely to remain relatively toothless for the first 100 days of the presidency, meaning that whatever it does or doesn't do and whatever Janet Yellen says or doesn't say basically will not affect anything.
Yep.
Interest rates could go either way in the next 100 days. They could go back to 2.25. They could go as high as 3. That's the Mortgage Bankers Association of America thinks that's extreme volatility is all on the cards.
Right. So I second that in the extreme volatility prediction, that certainly leading up to this inauguration, there's been a lot of positive vibes in the fiscal sense, in the economic sense. There's a lot of negative vibes out there, obviously, as well. But certainly the markets, the bond market, the equity markets have all responded very positively to the expectation of what will happen in these next 100 days. Now that we're here, we're actually going to be pulling the trigger. It'll be interesting to see what can actually get done, what can't get done. And I do really, definitely volatility is going to spike up. It's still really, really low. If you actually watch a measure called the VIX, it's still really low. Yesterday we saw a jump of about 5%, which is really nothing, actually, because of where we are. We're still so low. So we could easily see that jump back up to the 20s, easily, with some of these different changes. And I think also it'll be interesting to see, because what sort of an equal and opposite reaction we have to a lot of these, I know they're expected to be Reagan-esque type changes, but as I think about it and read more about it, Reagan made a lot of these changes back at a time when we had less globalization and we had less technology.
That's
so
correct.
It'll be interesting to see what some of these same types of changes that are being proposed, what the impact will be when you add massive globalization and increased globalization, and the speed of technology. It's not just the media, it's social media, it's just the speed of technology that's out there. And so what will happen? Because you will have that equal and opposite reaction, and it will be different now than it was back in the 80s.
That's absolutely correct, which leads to one of the next targets for the next 100 days, and that is trade wars, borders, tariffs, and U.S. trade policy. That's something that the President of the United States can affect very directly and very quickly, so it's likely to be part of the first 100 days. Segueing off of what Emily just said, President Trump will wake up on day one to a global economy which is digitally singular, whole, and one. Isn't so easy to get a trade war going because every single lobbyist in Washington will be at your door screaming.
Right.
So it's good on the stump, not so easy in practice.
Well,
it's a very delicate, very awkward.
It's very complicated too. I mean,
business.
I've had to really dig into some of these, the border tariffs that they're discussing and the different ways that they might actually formulate that between Paul Ryan's prediction, Paul Ryan's plan, and then the pros and cons of that. I don't know who, there was another plan, another senator, I can't remember. Anyway, but it's very, very, it'll be very, very, that in particular could really lead to a big spike in volatility, especially when you add to that the fact that we're sitting on Brexit right now as well, which it's across the pond, but what happens there and how the other European countries respond to that will be really, really interesting, because you could see the breakdown of the EU as a result of this and as a result of changes to immigration policy, et cetera, which is really at the core of a lot of these changes that drove Brexit. So that is going to have a huge impact, I think, on volatility as well. And volatility isn't necessarily bad. Volatility oftentimes, so in my world, in the investment world, volatility creates opportunities. So when you have sort of slow and steady, yes, it's nice. You can sleep at night a little bit better. You wake up and you don't see massive moves in the market that we saw back in 2009, where you just got lulled into sleep every time you saw a 600, 700 point move in the market. Not lulled to sleep, but you certainly became numb somewhat to it. So now we're sort of seeing just this sort of steady eddy sideways. That's going to change. That volatility will change, and that will create opportunities and fear. And
not to be a negative nabob of negativism, a nattering nabob of negativism. Who wins, who loses, and who cares when there's enormous volatility in the market? People who are in the market. It's well to remind ourselves that 70% of the American population are not in the market, and they are the entire population that Donald Trump appealed to and that Hillary Clinton belatedly and inexpertly appealed to. They are not in the market. Volatility doesn't help them. You can't win or lose if you're not in the game. So it's well to remember that a lot of these policy you should judge, this is just an interesting sidelight from my point of view, that when you're watching the politics of the next 100 days as if it were a sporting event, just sort out topic by topic, who's in the game, who's got a stake here. If it's a guy making $12 an hour or a family making $17 an hour, the exact Rust Belt people that Donald Trump appealed to, sort out the issues as to which actually affect them and which don't. You see, not on a secondary or theoretical or third level or fourth level or trickle down level basis, but in the first 100 days.
Well, and I think one of the reasons and one of the things that the Trump administration is saying that they're going to hammer first, of course, is the Affordable Care Act. And why is that? Because that actually does hit the man on the street very directly. I know my insurance has gone up. Everybody that has a private policy, the cost of their health insurance has gone up markedly. So that impacts my pocketbook. It impacts pretty much everybody on the street's pocketbook. And that's something that I'm sure will actually happen, for good, bad, or ugly. But that is something, there will be that change, repeal, replace, whatever it's going to be. That is going to happen fast because of that constituency that you're talking about needing to be addressed faster. That and taxes. I mean, obviously taxes, and not just corporate taxes, but your individual taxes. That's something I think that we also are going to see happen really quickly, and see what the impact of that is.
The whole
because that hits at the core of his constituency right there. Then everything else, I'm sure, will follow on that. But that's the I'm doing what I said.
The whole tax topic is very, very complex. There will be some of it in the first 100 days. I would like to propose that we do the tax topic in the second half.
Okay.
Because it's so complicated. Affordable Care Act, I absolutely agree with you. That again is rhetoric versus reality. Everybody, except for a few fringe crazies that you don't have to count, everybody believes that we need universal health care. Every industrialized nation has that's everyone, every single one has universal health care. There is no one who disagrees. The question is, what's the most efficient way to provide that, and how do you pay for it?
Right.
So we'll get into it a little bit later, but that's really the question. Anybody who says differently is fringy or doesn't understand the issue.
So then,
healthcare must be for everyone.
and that will be another driver of volatility for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, stick with us. We'll be right back at the second half of the show to discuss more of our predictions for the next 100 days.
Beautiful.